Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. So guys, super excited to share the sheer genius that is John Lee Dumas with you today on the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, I am fired up to be here, and let's burn this place to the ground.
I'm super excited because I actually saw you speak at Youpreneur last year, and I was on the stage this year thinking, holy crap, how do I emulate John Lee Dumas? That's never going to happen. And so it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, it's come full circle. And actually last year when I was listening to your talk, that was what had cemented in my mind to keep going with my podcast. It was only 2 months old at that time. And I looked at your funnel down method that you explained at the summit and thought, here's a guy who understands how to disrupt the market and understands how to disrupt the norm. Because obviously when you started your fire, that was incredibly disruptive, right?
It was. There was nothing like it on the market. It was a complete void that I hoped needed to be filled. And luckily I was right in that hope and it did need to be filled. But that's exactly what I would say is a disruptive move in a market, is to find something that nobody's doing, but that you really feel like needs to be done for any number of reasons. And you're never going to get total market validation because that doesn't exist in a brand new void in a brand new market. That's where sometimes you just have to go after what you believe in, follow your gut, your intuition, and just make things happen.
100%. And I think it's really interesting. So in the sales world, a lot of people are taught that there's a specific formula. You know, you go out there, you create a webinar funnel or something like that. And then overnight, you are going to make 6 figures, and that's just going to happen. And the thing that I really liked about you and your business is that you don't teach that at all. That's not the model that you preach. And actually, you set up your own sales process to work in the best way for you and your business.
That is true. I believe that there's an easy way to go after a certain direction in a certain process in a certain funnel in this market and as an entrepreneur. And I see a lot of people do it. And just because it's easy to do also makes it, in my opinion, easy to fail at, because I do love that phrase that high barriers equals low competition. So I always am searching for things that are high barriers. Doing a daily podcast, high barrier, because just nobody's going to do a daily podcast. It's an immense amount of work. You have to literally almost do nothing else for at least a couple of months until you get your systems and automations down before you make something like that win. So embrace the fact that something's hard to do. Embrace the fact that there's a high barrier, because it's going to mean less and less and fewer people in competition jump in on that. And that's exactly what I was sharing from stage last year at Youpreneur Summit was, listen, so many people just try to say, okay, I've got an idea for a product, let's get people into a webinar and then let's sell them the product. But there's a whole aspect that's missing to that. And that's where I went through that funnel up, funnel down philosophy of how can you build an audience that knows, likes, and trusts you enough to tell you, the entrepreneur, who they know, like, and trust, their biggest struggles, obstacles, and pain points, so that then you can create the solution for them in the form of a product or a service or a community. And again, a webinar is a great way to actually deliver that information and that potential product, service, or community, but that's down the funnel. That's not at the beginning. That's already well into the second half. You should already have an incredible relationship, awesome trust, a complete knowledge of what your avatar, your perfect potential client needs at its core, and then drive forward with that.
I really love this because, again, your strategy is about, it's person to person. People buy from people, right? So you're talking here about conversations and what I would refer to as relationship-based marketing. But some people think that podcasting is a one-way experience. So how would you explain to those people that actually you can still have the same conversations with what I would call my poddies, my podcast listeners, when they're right at the beginning of that journey thinking, well, it looks easier to set up a Facebook group that I can stick a survey in or stick a poll in?
It's just because it's easy that you can't and you really shouldn't be doing that. Because it's easy, there's a million Facebook groups. Because it's easy, there's a million X or Y or Z. All the things that are easy to do are easy to do, and they're being done, and they're being saturated. So that's why when you can really find something that does have a barrier, that has something that you need to actually learn as a skill and improve on as a technique, it's so critical. And that's why I love the fact that you have a name for your audience, just like I do, Fire Nation. My audience I refer to during these episodes. So if you and I were chatting right now on Entrepreneurs on Fire, we'd be having a great conversation, but then I would literally turn to my audience, of course, in a figurative manner, because this is a podcast episode, but I would turn to them and say, Fire Nation, what I hope you're really taking away, from what Jessica is sharing right now is X and Y and Z. And I would really break it down in that format. And what that's doing is that's bringing my audience, Fire Nation, in and making them feel like they're parts of this conversation, that it's not just the one-on-one conversation where they're a fly on the wall, but I'm letting them know, hey, I know you're here. I know you're listening, and I care about the value that you're going to get from this episode. So even though Jessica just dropped some value bombs, like I'm really going to circle back on a few things that I want to make sure that you get, because it's important for me to know that you're going to walk away with as much value as possible from this episode. And I want to address you directly because you're the reason why I do this show.
And that's ultimately the interesting thing. Again, one of the things that I noticed about the way that you treat your community is that you bring them in incredibly transparently. You share income reports and you share ins and outs of like launch breakdowns. In fact, your accountant or CPA, whatever you guys in America, the cool kids call them, but you bring them in to do a monthly report to share with your community exactly, what you've made, what that's looked like net, all that kind of thing. Do you think that that allows people to get even more behind the scenes with you in a way that they perhaps wouldn't get if you just had a Facebook group, for example?
It definitely does that. The more that you can bring your audience in behind the scenes, behind the curtain, let them see how the cookies are made, so to speak, it's incredibly important, because then they're going to say, you know what? Like, I'm not just like hearing this voice that's kind of like coming from above and like into my ears and, talking to people like Tony Robbins and Tim Ferriss and Barbara Corcoran. But like, no, like it's just John, and he's chatting right now with Kate about, some struggles they're having financially with this product or with this piece of software or that. And they can see where we're coming up short, and they can see where we're knocking it out of the park, and then everything in between. And like you mentioned, we bring our CPA on, CPA, accountant, exact same thing. So you can't go wrong there. We bring our lawyer/attorney on, and, he talks legal talk for us and gives some legal tips. And it's just really awesome that we can not just be kind of coming up here like rapping like, oh, this is all the awesome things that are happening in our company, and this is how much money we're making, and this is all the awesome trips we're taking. Like, we're sharing that, but we're sharing the other side as well. All the mistakes we're making, the flops that we have, the money we're not making because of certain things. And it's just all of it. So people can see that, okay, like this is a real business run by real humans, making real mistakes, having real wins and real losses on a day-to-day basis. And so that when, they just make a decision about whether they're going to invest in a product or a service that you've created, the trust level is just at a different point, because they know that you're being honest with them about what's good, also about what's being bad, that you're not just coming up with this front of that everything's rosy in the world, because that's just not the world that we live in. And I think that well-rounded 360-degree view of a business is critical.
It's also unusual, and it's certainly not something that we see all the time in the internet marketing space. I think, for a long time, people have been a little bit bamboozled by the images of people stood in front of Lamborghinis and throwing money off of cliffs and things like this. And I think that transparency, it breeds loyalty. And I know that your community are incredibly loyal. My community are incredibly loyal. I wouldn't say that I've ever done anything to try and make them do that. Do you know what I mean? And I wonder whether it's those things that you do innately, from that perspective of being really transparent with them, bringing them into your podcast episodes and making them feel like a real community, like a real fly on the wall, like somebody whose opinion you value and really want to hang out with every day, whether that's what breeds the loyalty that is your Fire Nation members.
What I think is important too is they know that I'm reachable and that I want to hear from them. I make that very clear. And so when I get a tweet or an Instagram DM or a Facebook message or definitely an email, I mean, that is coming directly to me, and I'm doing everything I can, if at all possible, to give them a thorough answer, to respond, to acknowledge them, because I've never forgotten about the fact from day one that all of my success is due to people who chose to press play and subscribe and to listen and to review and to give a rating and to invest, which for a lot of people is a lot of money into one of my products or my services or my communities or my journals or whatever it might be. And I just never forget that. Like, I never forget how big a deal that is. And I never forget where my success comes from. It doesn't come from me and my idea to launch a daily podcast. It doesn't come from my team or from Kate. I mean, we all work really hard, but my success comes from my audience, from my listeners who enjoy the content, get value from the content, tell their friends about the content, share it and support it and do all the things around it. And I think if that's where we keep our focus is as successful entrepreneurs, we're going to be able to build off of that success. And that's why you and I are talking now, 6 years after I launched Entrepreneurs on Fire, 2,000 plus episodes after I launched. When if you go back over my episodes, and there's been over 2,000 of them now, of successful entrepreneurs, they were all successful when I was talking to them. Some of them are nowhere to be seen now. And nobody knew which ones were going to be here and not be here, after time kind of continues to march on. It's those people that continue to focus on what got them here. Those are the ones that continue to win.
And I think that's huge. It's the value of reciprocity and also of just valuing your audience. And in a sales process, that's huge. Your audience wants to feel like you genuinely care, not just like you're out there to line your pockets from them.
Definitely. Reciprocity is a huge word. I think a lot of people don't focus on enough. I mean, what are you doing to your audience to make them just stop for 1 second and say, wow, Jessica, she did not have to do that. Like, that really is above and beyond. Like, think about your business right now as you're listening. Is there ever a point in your sales process or just in your overall content creation process that anybody in your business is saying that to you, about you, to their loved ones, to their friends? Like, think about that. Like, do you have that reciprocity moment where they're like, wow, Jessica really just hooked me up or went above and beyond or took the extra step or walked the extra mile in X, Y, or Z? When there comes a time down the road when I can support her, when I can, back her, when I can do anything for her, I'm going to do that. And when you have those micro reciprocity moments over and over and over again, they just add up to something pretty special.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time out today. I really, really appreciate it. I know that you are incredibly busy and I'm very jealous because you're also in Puerto Rico, so I'll leave you to the sun. If the poddies want to come and find out more about what is going on over at Fire Nation, where is the best place for them to find you?
So all the magic for our business happens at eofire.com. We have a lot of free resources for entrepreneurs there. We have free courses on podcasting, so you can be awesome like Jessica with your podcast, freepodcastcourse.com. And of course, my podcast is Entrepreneurs on Fire. We drop great audio masterclasses on amazing topics, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So I would love for you to check it out. And I just want to step back, Jessica, and say that, it's really cool connecting with you. And, the fact that you went from the audience of Youpreneur back in 2017 to up on stage, dropping value bombs, to London in the shadows of Westminster Abbey is incredible. And I think that you have a lot to be proud of.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. And seriously, so appreciate your time today. So guys, if you want to do like I do and stalk John and all of the amazingness that happens over at eofire.com, please do. Seriously, the income reports are phenomenally interesting if you are a numbers nerd like me. Thank you so much for your time. And I will see you guys in the next episode.